right, welcome back everybody to the YoungPro podcast. I'm here with my co-host Dustin Kupka and our guest Eric Schleien. He is 34 years old. He has his own podcast called the Intelligent Investing Podcast. He's mostly well known for being an asset manager, and he focuses on misunderstood and fringe securities. And he started in 2005. And I'm super excited to hear your story, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And you're on a road trip right
I'm
now, right?
on a road trip, yeah.
And where are you coming from?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. And
Yeah.
so what are you doing in Iowa now?
Just hanging out.
Just hanging out? No
Yeah.
business? No, just
Doing this.
hanging out,
Just doing this.
doing
I'm a road trip junkie.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw you brought a guest along with you. Peanut's somewhere
this
along
little
here.
guy, he's roaming around
Roaming
somewhere.
around, yeah.
He does his little waddle with his legs.
Little waddle.
I
with
call
his
it the
legs.
peanut
You hear
waddle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you hear that, you'll know.
You know.
He's my stock analyst. He actually does all the work for me.
Yeah, the
Little-
logistical
little,
thing.
little, yeah.
Well, can we get a quick little, background of your story? I know a little bit, but
Yeah.
just for, everybody else.
Sure. So, I got into investing while I was in high school.
Okay.
Kind of funny actually. So I was with my mom,
All right.
and we were in a bookstore. And I was a kid. The one thing my parents would always get me, if I wanted a book, they'd buy me a book. They really wanted me to kind of be self-educated and free thinking, which I'm really, really grateful for. That's something they did very, very, very well.
Yeah.
And we're at a bookstore, and I want to go be a big boy and go into the business section. Usually I go to the teen section. I was like, oh, I want to be mature today. I'll try this maturity thing out and go to the business section. And I'm looking through a bunch of books, and they all look boring and whatever. And there was this one book called it was by the Motley. It was the publisher was the Motley Fool. And it was something like a teen's guide to making more money than your parents ever dreamed of. Well, as a teenager, that's a very appealing title to me,
Yeah.
So I go and I crack open the book and start reading it. And they talk about, sort of the basic financial concepts, like, spend less money than you earn, right? And don't go into lots of credit card debt. And then I saw that compound interest graph. Where you start with $10,000,
Yeah.
compound it, the market rate of return for 50 years, and now you have several $1 million. And my first thought was, if I'm a total loser in life and I just end up flipping burgers at McDonald's my whole life, I could actually still be worth millions of dollars by the time I'm in my 60s. That was a major revelation for me. I don't know why that's where my mind went at like 14 or whatever, but that's how it happened.
That's pretty good.
So did you tell your mom, hey, Mom, I want to be way more richer than you ever thought of?
A lot more politely than that.
Yeah.
But so, I keep reading the book,
Yeah.
and they go through a few different investors. So there's this one guy, and I'm not going to say his name, but, I picked up his book, lots of fancy charts and everything. And I'm like, if I'm going to do this for 50 years, that's the other insight I had. I had the insight, you have to do this for you have to be in the game a long time.
Yeah.
So I go, if I'm going to do this a long time, I said 50 years in my head. This is too complicated. Something doesn't seem right here. So then I picked up a book by a guy named Peter Lynch, and Peter Lynch is a genius. And for those of you who don't know, he ran the Magellan Fund, and he had a very good track record. And reading his book, Went Up on Wall Street, it kind of put me in the frame of mind of, these aren't just stocks and little things, ticker symbols moving up and down. These are actual businesses with balance sheets and income statements. And but the one thing that was hard for me, he owned hundreds of stocks in his portfolio, and he was also investing during a really good time for the market. So I just, he discovered Snapple when it was very small, and so I didn't have the confidence that I could replicate what he did, or at least do it as well. So I go, okay, this is interesting. I'm not sure this is the game I still want to play. The third investor they talked about in the book was Warren Buffett. Runs Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
And that was like the light bulb that went off of, essentially this idea that if you can buy something for less than it's worth, and you do that over time, and you avoid being stupid and losing money, you'll do pretty well. Kind of like if, here's a glass of whiskey, right? And, you look at this glass, there's some ice cubes, and there's some whiskey. I'm not going to say the name of the whiskey, but we don't want to give free advertising.
Free sponsorships out here.
But there's a nice whiskey in this glass. So let's say this cup, it's a nice cup, has a nice letter M on it. Let's say the cup is worth $1, right? For all intents and purposes. And the ice cubes are worth 10 cents. And the whiskey in here, say, is worth $5 of whiskey, right? So 5 plus 1 plus 10, right? $6.10. Really basic math. Well, if I could buy this cup for $3, right? The worst case scenario is, I'm walking outside, I drop the cup, it shatters into a million pieces, but the liquidation value is still $6.10. Now, the best case scenario is this becomes like the most rare whiskey in the history of the world. This cup becomes a major collector's item, and, because you've touched it and you get really famous or something. It becomes $1 million cup.
This is what
right?
I do.
Right? And now I paid $3 for a cup that's worth $1 million in 10 years from now. But I don't need to predict that to make a lot of money. So I've covered my downside. And that's kind of how Buffett was looking at things. And it put me in this frame of reference of, if I can value an asset and buy it at 50 cents on the dollar, I'm going to do really fucking well.
Yeah.
So I started to read the books that Buffett read when he was a kid. Now, just for full disclosure, he read every investing book in the Omaha Public Library by the time he was 7. I wasn't that ambitious, but I read some of the major books that he read when he was younger. The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, and then also Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits by Phil Fisher. And it really just got me in that framework of being able to value businesses. And then I was off to the races, and I started making a list of all the companies that interest me. I still have that original list on one of the books about Buffett.
That's pretty cool.
And I just started learning about businesses and having fun with it. And that was my beginnings. That was my roots.
And so, all right. So
Wow,
now,
cool.
at what age did you kind of realize I'm going to do this? Like, this is going to be my career, not just for myself, but for other people.
So by the time I was a senior in high school, I was pretty sure I wanted to do this. But you're in high school, so
Yeah, but was that an asset manager, like, or is that just for myself?
Oh, hold up.
Okay,
Yeah, so let's get to it. So I'm a senior in high school. I'm pretty sure I want to do this.
Okay.
And I decided I'm going to go right to Warren Buffett, and I asked him about poker. My neighbor said he had a friend who played poker with him or something.
Yeah.
So I asked him about Texas Hold'em. He told me he wasn't very good at Texas Hold'em, but that I should come to his annual meeting. So for my high school graduation gift, my dad goes, "What do you want for your high school graduation present?" He asked me. I go, "I'd like to go to Omaha." He looks at me. He's like, "What? You want to go? You don't want like a new digital camera or like you want to go to Omaha, Nebraska?" You gotta remember, I'm from the East Coast. Nebraska is like, rednecks and cornfields.
You still in Philadelphia at this time?
I was in New York.
New York time. Okay.
But we look at Nebraska like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Right? And
Well,
there isn't a lot
accurate,
there.
yeah.
Well, Omaha's pretty cool though.
Iowa,
I love Omaha. I do love Omaha. The old market is my jam. I said, "Yeah, I want to go to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, and I want you to come with me." So he was very moved by that, and he goes, "Okay, if that's what you really want, I'll respect that." He totally thought I was totally freakish for asking him that. And I went, and I see Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett up on stage, and I'm sitting there, and in that moment, I go, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to I'm going to have an annual meeting one day with my investors." That was my epiphany right there. 17, 18 years old. My first Berkshire Hathaway meeting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to top.
I think there's always those moments, as we grow up, you have those kind of those epiphanies, if you will, of like, you know what, this is it. This may be what I need to do.
Yeah. Well, sometimes sometimes for me though, it's not even always major epiphanies. So I'll give you an example, okay? Because it's actually one thing happened just the other day. I'm sitting, and it actually happened last night. I'm laying in bed last night, right? And I'm looking at new apartments. My lease expires in August. I'm gonna look for a new place. And originally I said, okay, I'm gonna go look for a new place in Philly. Now I still might, but I'm on the phone with one of my friends last night, and she goes, "I don't think you should be in Philly." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "No, you should like be traveling the world, go meet some yoga girls in Bali or something like or go to Italy. Like you are being limited with your mindset and the way you live your life, right? You are limiting yourself hanging out with people in Philadelphia, and you need to be more with people, at your level, like more at your tribe, right? And I thought about it, and I'm like, you're kind of right. I think maybe I'm a little too nice to some people. Yeah. And then I thought, I don't necessarily think Philly is inherently the place I want to be at. I kind of always knew that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to necessarily have to rush into a new place. So she's like, you know what I think you should do? I think you should just put all your stuff in a storage unit and travel for a few months and figure out where you want to be. So, of course, being fire interesting. I have some skill sets in some areas, and then I'm like a total idiot in some other areas. So I ask her a question. You guys might laugh. I go, wait, is there self-storage units that can fit an entire one-bedroom apartment? She's like, there's self-storage units that can fit a house. Right. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I kind of like that idea. So I that's now in the cards of,
And that was just 24 hours ago.
That was 24 hours ago. So there's a very good chance, I'd say more than 50% at this point, that come August, I'm going to put all my stuff in a storage unit, and I'm going to take Peanut, and we're going to travel the country for, as long as it takes for me to find a place. And I'm like, this is where I want to be.
That is super cool.
I don't know. Yeah. So, but see, that wasn't an epiphany. I call that a breadcrumb. And here's the difference. And I'm not just saying this. This is actually very much applied in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Often the biggest life changes you have are things where on the surface you kind of don't want to. When my friend said this to me, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm in Philly. But she did not budge. She's like, no, listen to me. At least consider it. I was like, I'll consider it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when we get kind of comfortable in a certain way of doing things or engaging with things, we start to reject the things that actually would be good for us. So here I am in a city that's like, I have a love-hate relationship with, slightly toxic for me, actually, I would say. And here I am fighting for a place that I don't even love. Like, what the hell is that about, right? Yeah. So, but our brains are wired for survival. And our brains will always, the default thing is to do what we're comfortable and what we're used to. This is why people who grow up in poverty look to do things that keep them in poverty. Or people who grew up in, say, if their parents were like in an abusive marriage or something, you'll look for abusive partners and you'll push away people that are good for you. Same thing with jobs, right? If, your parents had jobs that maybe they didn't really like, but it was sort of out of necessity and they were in survival, you start to pick jobs in that, and then maybe you complain about it. So it takes sort of an extra willpower to kind of go against your own wiring and even sometimes literally do the opposite of how you feel. Your feelings are not very good at telling you what to do. So while there are these epiphanies that feel really good, sometimes there's also these little breadcrumbs of, yeah, I don't like this idea, but logically I think this is good for me. And if I don't act right this second, right, I know I'm gonna destroy it. So of course, last night, the moment I had this little breadcrumb, I texted like 20 people saying, I don't think Philadelphia is for me. Just so that there's no way I can rationalize this now.
Yeah, I do that too. Yeah. I let a bunch of my friends know I'm going to do something, so then I can't back out. Yeah.
Accountability. Yes. So whether it's a business idea that you have, or a relationship, romantically or platonically that you want to be into, a geographic region you want to be into, whatever it is, often the things that are best for you are the things that actually most disgust you, because you're wired for survival. If you tell people about it, you can't go back, and now you've spoken it into existence. Yeah. And at the end of the day, who you are is not your feelings. It's not your momentary. This is what I want. Because if you trust that, you'll want 10 different things within the span of 24 hours. But who you are is your word. And when you give your word to something, and you kind of throw your hat over the ring, shit starts to happen.
It is amazing.
It's kind of cool how that works.
Crazy how that works. Yeah. We had our first meeting between his business partner, Kurt, which is a contractor, and then I have a business partner, Shannon, that's my contractor. Both Shannon and Kurt get along well. They do the same thing, and me and him are very similar. we met 6 months ago saying we were going to create this new business where we were going to go after bigger buildings. Well, then this 57plex came up that we're closing on in a week.
Hey,
yeah,
hey.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
And thank goodness we had been, and even before we met, I had been telling everybody like, I'm going to do this. We're gonna meet. Like this has to happen. And now,
Well, the funny thing is
So-
when we're sitting there, was it Perkins?
somewhere,
Is it
some
cut-
not
no,
expensive.
IHOP.
IHOP. Okay, what's IHOP?
It was IHOP. So we're sitting in IHOP. Of course, we all meet up, and here comes Ethan, video cameras, all this digital stuff. He's setting.
Sounds like this guy.
He's
Huh?
setting up his cameras. We're all sitting there, and people are just and there's like a six top. Well, place is getting busy. Ethan don't care. He's using the six top, putting all this camera equipment on. He sets up the tripod, and you would have thought, and we're like,
It's a
Ethan,
full
what are you-
production.
Yeah, what are you doing? He's like, I want to catch the moment, man. This is where it all began, right here. This is it, And now looking back, I'm like, and he goes, dude, I got that footage.
I came across it the other day when I was going through my stuff.
like,
and
how
it was
cool,
like,
right?
That's awesome.
Just capture
cool.
that,
So cool.
But I would tell you, speak to that. My dad, when I was 13, it was August 30th, 1993, construction worker, entrepreneur, had many businesses. We had land, boats, motorcycles, four-wheelers, the whole deal, right?
Yeah.
We had the first VCR in our neighborhood. This is, first VCR. We're like, go to Cup because, man, these guys, it was a big deal back then.
Are you old enough to even use a
Yeah,
VCR?
I'm 92. I'm 30 years old. Yes,
Okay,
I watched
yeah.
original Disney's on a
Well,
VCR.
all right,
Okay, come on.
We were,
All right.
All right, VCR, you put it in.
Yes, I
Okay.
know. Okay.
Okay.
It's a little different, yeah.
We did have the DVD, the
Ah,
additional
yeah.
DVD.
Do you know what a cassette player is?
Yeah.
I do know what a cassette
Okay.
player is as well. Never had one in a vehicle though.
Oh, that's
Really?
No, I never had one in a vehicle.
No, I feel like an old man.
awesome. Yeah, right. So I just remember that lifestyle, right? Grew
Yeah.
up, dad owned his own business, and he was very entrepreneur, and he thought very much like a business owner. Like he wanted to provide for his family. Kicker was he was on a roof. He had a couple of guys working for him. He made a lot of money active, okay, because we had money. Problem with it was when you fall off a roof 10 feet up, break your neck, and become a quadriplegic, game over, right? Can't move, can't produce. And so we saw all this go bye-bye. Like, as fast as they can take stuff, they did. And we had to buy this van for handicapped. That was like 40 grand. That was 20 some years ago. I bet it'd be $60,000 now, 70. But we had to buy all this stuff for him. But I remember shooting baskets outside my house and just having that moment of like, I will never, ever, ever, ever let this happen to my kids, my family, that kind of thing. And I just remember sitting there shooting and like, I need to figure out a way to make money passively, like do the work, set something up. And I went in, so I spoke it because I went in and I went in and told my mom. I said, Mom. And she felt bad because they obviously did everything they knew, right? They followed what they thought they knew, and still to this day, we talk about this, but I told her, hey, I'm going to find a way to do this, and I will find a way to do it. And ever since that moment, it constantly comes up. Everything I'm doing, everything I try to do is like create ways to make money passively. Do the work once, set it up, businesses, and not the active way. So that breadcrumb or the epiphany, I think we all have those, and it's
That's whether you
it
listen
shapes
to it.
you, man.
It's whether
It
you
shapes-
listen to it.
Absolutely. Shapes you into who you are and the decisions you make. And it's like, who you become is the little decisions every day on what voice to listen to and then what voice not to listen to.
Yeah, I'd say in my experience and what I've observed is everyone has the breadcrumbs. The vast majority of people don't listen to them.
Right.
The vast majority of people, it'll be a thought, a nice idea, and immediately their brain will kill it off, and they don't have the mental discipline to stay true to that. And then you look back and, you fast forward their life 10, 20, 30 years, and they're in the exact same position as they were, just a more better, different version of it. If you have a job you hate, you have a different job you hate. You're in a
It pays
relationship.
little bit more,
You're in a
yeah.
toxic relationship. You're in a new toxic
Yeah.
relationship. It
Yeah.
usually almost doesn't change. They did a study. There's a guy named Seth Godin who I'm a big fan of in the marketing world, and he talks about this, that they have shown that people will not actually change their behavior. 97% of the time, people will not change their behavior until the circumstances forces them to. So what you did is only 3% of the population actually willing to take a stand for something and go against their actual own emotional state in that moment, or go against what the circumstances call for. It's very tough to do, and it takes that for me, it took that real mental discipline, because and I'm speaking now at 34 years old, but at 18 years old, it was actually experience. I'm not kidding, just so you get where I started from. It was the experience of feeling, be kind of like this, right? When you're thirsty, you need a glass of water. Well, imagine if this water was poisonous, and all around my life, I was thirsty for poisonous water. I had to go against my thirst and go do something completely different than what my body and my emotional state was telling me. It took maybe 4, 5, 6 years of that intense mental discipline, literally going against every bone in my body to have my sort of emotional state start to align with what was actually good for me. So the brain, so it's
amazing.
It's twofold, right? The brain can rewire itself,
Yep.
right? And it only takes an instant to make that decision, but the actual biochemistry changing can take years. And most people will never even people that have done a lot of work, most people will never overcome it.
No.
I mean, you probably have seen it too.
Yeah.
Like,
Go ahead.
I was like, I just get hit up all the time now on social media.
Do
I'm
you?
not trying to be like, the TikTok stuff, so that like feeds to my Instagram. Just people asking, like, what do I do? Where do I start? And then like, I don't just like message back. I'll video call people, and I've had hundreds now of videos of like me doing a quick 15, 20 minutes with somebody that I have absolute stranger, and I'll be like, look, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, go to your local RIA and go meet an agent at an open house who's young and hungry.
How many of them come back to you?
That's what I say. Do not come back to me.
Yep.
Like, I get this many messages. I took this. I want to help. Do not contact me until you do these things. And when you do, don't be surprised if I ask you a couple things about Rich Dad Poor Dad before we have our conversation, because I just don't have the time. Like, this is where you start. It's the foundation. I can't teach you thousands of pages that I've read in hours in relationships, so like
You gotta find people that want it, man. Like, yeah.
Dustin says, if we can
there's a
find a couple more of me, he'd be a rich man. I'm working on it.
It's tough. Look, there's a great story. It's not a true story, but it's a great story, and it's a story about Mozart. And Mozart composed all these symphonies, and composed them at a young age. Right? He was considered a genius and a savant. So this young kid, maybe like 12, 13 years old, comes up to Mozart and says, how do I write symphonies like you? And Mozart says, "Oh, don't write symphonies." And he goes, "Well, why not? You were writing symphonies when you were a kid." He goes, "Yes, but I wasn't going around asking people how to write symphonies."
I don't know if I like that. That is ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a true story, but it's just
It
so
is. It is.
But it speaks to something.
It speaks to something.
Because look, I get the same thing. I have people all the time saying, "How do I start getting into investing? What book should I read? Blah 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 blah." But I actually look back. I never did that.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah,
I wasn't. Now I might have on occasion
asked questions.
But I wasn't like, "How do I start?"
Yeah.
Or when people ask me for because I do a lot of coaching and consulting, and when people ask me for like dating advice, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't going around asking people for like dating advice. And what do I say to this girl? And blah 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 blah. Like,
I just did it.
I just did it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it says I think there's people who are almost, they hide behind asking for advice.
Right.
And it's like, it's at the end of the day, intuitively you need to figure out what to do, and then course correct along the way. That's how you're going to learn. Not finding the magic thing. And if you say this one thing, and then you get the girl.
But
you say this one thing, then you'll have the business.
Don't you think though that when we ask some of these questions internally, like that we know kind of what's what we need to. We know what we need. We know what we should be thinking or doing.
I'd say
but we don't do it.
99% of the time.
And what is the context of that
Just,
again?
you know, when you just sometimes you ask, you know,
Yourself or someone else?
somebody else. You're trying to get, you know, you're trying to ask someone about something, and deep inside, you know, like, hey, what should I do in this situation?
Yeah.
You know what you need to do, but you're trying to get justification. You're trying to get them to buy, you know, like buy into your story.
Right.
It's an agenda. And I, you know, my man,
That's what I'm literally thinking about conversations we've had.
Ethan has you know,
I have a tendency to ask that, like, hey, I need to know, should I
but
be
you're
floored?
taking action, so you're
Yeah,
good.
well, it's in a different sense. Like, is this too big? Like, am I going too much? Like the conversation.
Well, that's why I said
Even with you the other
99%.
night.
99%.
Yeah,
But see,
until
the
2
questions you're
a.m.
asking. But see, the questions you were asking me,
We're
it was
very
coming from a
specific.
different place.
Yeah.
Right,
Because
absolutely.
you actually were like, okay, I think this might be good for me, but how does this work? Tell me about this detail. So it wasn't things that you would actually internally know.
Yeah.
You were seeking information, but here's the distinction. You were seeking information so then you could figure it out for yourself whether it's a good thing for you.
Yep.
You never once asked me, is this a good thing for me?
Yeah.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
So for context, real quick, Eric came over about 2 nights ago. We found out we were both in Iowa, and at like 10 p.m. and we're both clearly action takers.
He sends me a DM on Instagram. He goes, "Are you a night owl? Do you like whiskey? You want to come over?" I'm like, "Yeah."
So up to that point, you guys,
No, we had talked on the phone a few
we've
times.
talked before, but we never met.
Yeah,
Okay.
we never met.
because you like, yeah, I just met, yeah, we just hung out last night.
Yeah, yeah, and so we chopped it up, and he is very intelligent about funds, and I have a good understanding of the stock market. Nothing like his, but I'm really into the real estate realm, and I even know some syndication stuff. Well, funds is a whole different ball game, and so he took the time to explain, really like baby step me, because there would be times where I'd be like, we'd stop right in the middle of conversation. I was like, I will not understand the rest of this until I know this one part and I'm following.
Which
So
I
like,
fucking respect so
and
much.
I was
that
like,
you
bro,
do that.
I'm keeping up, but that last thing, I'm not.
Last thing, I have no idea what you
just said. So if we want to keep going, we gotta.
Because if we keep going,
I'm
gonna be
gone.
thinking about
that one
thing.
part, dude.
Yeah.
Like I can't help
And see,
it.
I love that because
Yeah.
the last thing I want to do is be talking over you and you're like nodding your
Yeah,
head. And you
no,
know
I
what I'm
understand.
talking about.
Mhm.
I would have no respect for that.
Yeah,
yeah, I'd be like, just yes, man. Yeah, I understand. Like, no, you don't.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And on that point, like I've said that, I think I've said this before. The first millionaire I ever met, like I burned the bridge with on accident because he took the time to end up meeting with me. I think it was like 2021.
Yeah.
And I could not understand and digest the vocabulary he was using with me, and he just felt like that he was just wasting his time. And it was like, my goodness, like now going into this, I really need to have some kind of foundation before I just. Where do I start? You know, like it's a more specific or targeted. Like this is what I'm doing, and this is the next step I'm struggling with. Do you think you may have? You know, and
Yeah, it's
different.
awesome.
Yeah, different.
I love the conversation, you know, because I think it's, you know, whether we talk about, you know, like what you're doing, stocks or real estate, or it don't matter what you're doing, it's people.
Yeah.
Right? It's people. People are people, and they're the coolest. We're the coolest creatures on the planet, right? I mean, we're so complex.
Weird fucking creatures.
We are
too.
weird.
Yeah.
Like I've always felt if like there was aliens looking down on us, they'd be
They're
like,
like,
"What the fuck is this?"
What are they doing right now?
I know. And then you have like Peanut, like, and they have these little creatures that follow them around. You know, like who are these people? Yeah, I get it.
And we dress them up in outfits, and those creatures don't even know what they stand for. We spend our money to do it.
Yeah.
We give birthdays to them.
Yeah, they're like, oh man. But yeah, I love the conversation because, like I said, it's all universal, right? Success be success, and you know, but like you said, you know, you just gotta you gotta want it, man. You gotta want it. You gotta have that feeling that's in your stomach, like you want change, and you're willing to do whatever it takes. And that was one thing with Ethan when we sat down. You know, he called me out of the blue because he knew we were flipping houses, and he was, you know, he had some rental property at the time, and
It's like 5 years ago.
5 years ago and
Yeah.
stuff. And so he was just like, dude, I just want to come check out your properties. I just want to go walk through them, you know, and let's maybe I'll buy you lunch. I'm like, oh, free lunch, sweet.
Yeah.
And so that, and you know, and that was him driving an hour, basically 45 minutes to just come walk through properties. Like, I don't have time to just walk through, you know, I'm thinking, why does he want to just come down here and just walk through a property? You know, I'm just like, man, But he wanted that perspective. He wanted different. He wanted change in his life, and he was willing to drive 45 minutes one way, 45 minutes up, have dinner, pay for it, and then invest in that time to do all this stuff. And so kudos. I just think that's Ethan, us, people listening, like that's
the key.
That's it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think to add to that too is kind of knowing the game you're playing too, right? Because like there are people who they work hard and really hustle, but they're almost in like a hamster wheel, right? They're just like in there hustling, burning themselves out. I think that, and I think that's a very American thing too, quite frankly. Well, actually, I would even say more so, especially in the Midwest. We're in Iowa, so this is very
especially the Altab.
There's a saying that's in the United States, but even more so in the Midwest, right? The value of hard work, right? And of course, with the things that you're interested in, you should not be cutting corners and work hard at them. But some people almost take that to this glorification of suffering, in a sense, right? Of like, I have no time for anything. I'm working so hard. I'm exhausted. But if I just keep working really, really hard, and then one day I'll be successful. And I think a lot of people, and for those listening who are entrepreneurs or who want to be entrepreneurs, a lot of people would actually benefit from actually slowing the fuck down and being like, okay, what are you actually committed to? You said something which was, that you want to do things that were passive. So for example, with me, one thing I've come to terms with is I actually really like to be lazy, right? Not a very sexy thing to say, especially in the entrepreneur world, but knowing myself, I don't want to be, for instance, going into a property, right? If I was to buy a house and like rehabbing the whole thing, like that's just not my thing, right? And, for people who it is their thing, I think that's awesome, but it's not my thing, right? I don't even know how to change a tire, and I'm not interested in learning how to change a tire. I'm in the Midwest. I know that was like, just
What?
I know.
I don't know how to change one either. I mean, I agree with you, but I'll demo a house. I'll demo a house, but I ain't changing no tire.
Yeah. But the thing is like I know myself well enough, right? Like I know my weaknesses, I know my strengths. I'd rather put 10 times more energy into my strengths, maybe mitigate my weaknesses a little bit, but like not spend that much time on it. And so I don't spend a lot of time trying to like, do like handyman stuff and change a tire. And I'm bougie as fuck. I grew up in Westchester, New York. Like not much is changing, right? But I also, when it comes to like finding investment opportunities where I can be passive, if I can find, say, a property at a high cap rate, but in some bumfuck area of the country that no one likes, and I can put 20% down, and then I could take that money and then go buy an undervalued stock, I'm good at that game. Let me quadruple down on that game. I'm not going to go spend 10 years learning how to like rehab stuff and do development. I'll give money to someone else who does development, but I'm not interested in doing it. So I think if you kind of slow down, figure out stuff you're good at, and then figure out, okay, what the hell am I doing this for? That's the other thing too. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who are actually miserable. And then I wonder, like, why do you have your own business? The whole reason I became an entrepreneur is it's a freedom conversation. I want freedom in my life. I want to be able to go on road trips and go to random people's houses and do podcasts, right? Yeah. I would not be able to do that if I was, running a mining company and had to be in the mines with everyone or something, something like that, right?
Or any other 9 to 5.
Or any other 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if I'm an entrepreneur and then I became enslaved to my job, I should just go work at Goldman Sachs at that point and work my ass off until I'm 40 and then retire or something, right? So for me, if I can find ways to make money, provide value for people, work with people I love, have a great lifestyle, to me it's a lifestyle thing. And I think a lot of people start to hustle at the expense of the lifestyle, figuring, well, one day I'll have the lifestyle. And usually one day never comes.
Yep.
I can relate with that.
Yeah.
So in your story or in your journey through this, you're 34, right? So now you're in New York, traveling the Midwest.
Yeah, well, Philly now.
Or Philly now, and
East Coast.
Not so much leaving there in September, right?
Hey, we'll see. Yeah, but it looks like it.
But obviously, your go-to moneymaker, your one thing, if you will, is that just managing stocks, how are you making money? How are you becoming successful? Obviously, you're sounds like you're coaching, you're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But what's your bread and butter? And
Yeah, my bread and butter, and the only reason I got into the coaching stuff is to actually impact companies. So it still has to do with the investment stuff. I just happen to fall in love with the coaching as well. But my bread and butter is investment management, and it doesn't. I was talking to you about this when so Ethan goes, "Oh, you really love real estate," and I go, "I actually don't love real estate. I love investing." So to me, real estate is one sector I do look at because there's a lot of opportunity if you can, especially in fringer markets. If you go to Miami where everything's like a low cap rate, or San Francisco, I don't think there's as much opportunity. Now, if you're a developer, maybe a different story. But for someone like me, I'm much more attracted to some, like I just worked with a partner in buying a hotel in some bumfuck area of Minnesota. Bought a double-digit cap rates, true cap rates, not what's a listed cap rate, right? It was 12-13% cap rate buying this hotel at. Now, does it?
do you need more? Do you need more partners?
Always. We're always
perfect. Let's go there.
Now, the thing is that often you see things listed at a certain cap rate, but then if you make certain adjustments and be conservative, it's not anything near what the true cap rates are. Right?
True cap rate is.
So I don't, there's a management company in place. Are they the best management company? Probably not. I have no idea. But for me, I don't have to manage it, or I'm not managing. That's not my work. I don't manage hotels. But I don't even know if I'll make money with the place. I don't think I'll lose a lot of money, right? So the Warren Buffett always says, rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Yeah. See, if I bought a hotel that has potential at a 6 cap or something like that, and the interest rates, go to 6%, and now that hotel's worth half as much and nothing changes, well, I'm fucked, right? You buy something at such a high cap rate, 20% down, even if the hotel ends up not being that profitable, or maybe they have a peak year or something and things don't work out, probably not going to lose a lot of money, and potentially, have a pretty good IRR, right? Now, because I have an investment skill set, I can take that money that, when it's financed, and I can go buy stocks with it if I want to, right? And there's plenty of opportunities I'm finding in the stock market. Some of it's in publicly traded real estate, some of it's in publicly traded companies.
Like REITs?
Yeah. REITs are one example of publicly traded real estate.
You're speaking high level just for other people keeping up.
Yeah, so a REIT is a real estate investment trust, and there's certain tax benefits to it. But there's other publicly traded stocks that do have real estate as their main business, and they just happen not to be in a REIT structure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was one company we were invested in called LACO, or the Los Angeles Athletic Club. They were a publicly traded limited partnership, but their main asset, they had 2 main assets. The first one was the Storage West self-storage facilities. That was about the majority of their book value was in self-storage facilities under Storage West name, and then the rest of it was in a building. For those listeners in California, you would almost inherently know it if you're in LA, the Los Angeles Athletic Club. So I was buying a stake in the LA Athletic Club, a stake in the California Yacht Club, and a stake in the storage units, and I was paying around a 10% cap rate when I valued the limited partnership, when self-storage units private market value is about double that. So I was paying 50 cents on the dollar of private market value. CubeSmart bought them out at a made a nice return, but I didn't have to predict the future of self-storage. I just bought it at such a cheap valuation. I didn't know I'd make a lot of money, but I knew I wasn't going to lose a lot of money.
Real quick, so I haven't heard someone outside of real estate use cap rate. So we're obviously super familiar with that, but I'd love to hear how you explain cap rate to somebody that has never heard that term before. Obviously it stands for capitalization rate, but can you explain that?
Yeah,
the dumbed down version. I'm just curious. I might steal this myself for a TikTok or something, but
it's so in the stock market, one of the main ratios we use is what's called the PE ratio, which is price to earnings.
Yep.
Cap rate's basically the PE ratio of real estate, right? So I'm looking at, what's this property or properties producing, net operating income, right? So after all expenses, what am I left with? In a company, what you would call it your net profit, right? Not your revenues, your net profit. Real estate, it's your NOI. divided by your total price. Now, that's the formula
For cap rate.
for cap rate. It's very easy to abuse that number, and brokers do it all the time. So when the way that and when you're looking at public stuff, it's a little different. But when I looked at the LA Athletic Club, what I was looking at was, okay, I don't know necessarily what the true cap rate is, but how do I look at it? So I figured, okay, I'm going to value the California Yacht Club at 0. I have no idea what it's worth. It's very tiny, so I just say it's not worth anything. Of course, it's worth something, but to be conservative, I say it's not worth. It's worthless, right? And then I say, okay, the self-storage units, right, are making X amount a year. And then I looked at, okay, if you value the self-storage units at, a kind of a current rate, then I look at the LA Athletic Club and I go, well, what would this kind of be worth in a sale? Now, hard to know, but I looked at other sales of buildings in the area. Now, the LA Athletic Club is beautiful. It's many, many stories. It's old building from the 1880s. There was abandoned buildings, right, being sold at X per square foot. The market price at that time when I was buying it was essentially valuing these self-storage facilities at about a 10% cap rate. And I just knew that in a private sale, they would go for probably like 3, 4, 5%, when it comes to private stuff, right, a little different. First I'm going to look at, okay, probably 10% management fee unless I know I can get a better deal. When it comes to maintenance, I'd say the one thing I see abused the most is maintenance. And what brokers will often do is show you like the maintenance from last year. So what you want to do is look at, so when I'm looking at a stock, I'm not necessarily looking at what did the company make in year 1. I'm looking at what's called earnings power. What do I think the true earnings of this business is over, say, a cycle. So normalized earnings power. Real estate, same thing. There's the maintenance for 1 year, but that might not be over a given market cycle what your true, capital expenditures are, right? Because maybe in year 9 you have to replace the roof or something. So the way that I look at it is I just tack on a 2.5% maintenance of the purchase price, and that gives me a pretty conservative.
Oh,
yeah.
We do 5% of gross.
There's different ways to do it, but at least
Which
that
is
way
higher than what the agents are reporting, anyways.
Yeah. So this will be significantly higher what the agents are reporting, and if in sort of my personal criteria is if I can get around a 9.5 cap or higher after doing that, I know it's gonna be pretty hard to lose money. Now the flip side is most things are not going to make that cut.
No,
probably under 1% will make that cut.
Yeah, that's because even in Iowa, we're looking at depending on what part of Iowa you're in, you're like 6 to 8, and 8 you got to be in a pretty questionable
location.
Yeah, Philly. It's you can get 7 in a really questionable area. So
yeah, but you guys probably got better appreciation than we do too, don't you think?
I don't. Maybe. Well, certainly the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Philly real estate has actually appreciated a lot in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But again, this kind of comes back to the whole rule number 1: don't lose money. When I look at real estate, now this is very different than what most people do in real estate. Remember, I'm not a real estate guy. I'm an investment guy. I'm not interested in what the potential is of an area. I actually take the position I have no edge. I take the position you have an edge over me. If I'm going to buy something in Iowa, I just assume someone like you knows the market better than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just assume the price will never go up. I actually make that assumption. Now, probably not a good assumption to make, but I make the assumption the price never goes up. So I don't, when a broker tells me it's an up and coming area or they give me a pro forma thing, I'm not even interested. I just want to see the current numbers and if that fits the criteria.
Right.
Now that's an ultra conservative way of doing it. I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. That's the way that I do it.
Yep.
So that's what I get comfortable in because I also know my limits and I don't know a lot about real estate markets. And real estate, as I'm sure you guys know, is very local and there's local knowledge. And what's appropriate in
One
Des
market,
Moines,
yeah.
Iowa is going to be very different than, say, Denver, Colorado. It's not the same market. So I'm looking at real estate globally. I have to apply these filters because if I try to get too nuanced and too smart, I'm going to get fucked.
That makes
Exactly.
sense. Yeah.
As
As an agent, how does that make
well,
you feel?
well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's truth. I mean, I'm a real estate agent. I'm an investor, a real estate agent. I deal with this every day, and it's so funny. It's always like, yeah, here's what the rents are, but they could be, I'm like, then why don't you get them there? It's
Yeah.
like, what's this could be stuff? Like, then if you could be, then why aren't you doing it?
And I always wonder too. Here's the other thing I always wonder: if you think they're actually going to be there, then why don't you sell the place next year when the rents are there?
Yeah, just wait. Yeah,
Yeah,
just wait on it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that all
All
the time. And they do the equations, and then they go and that's what the valuation is. And that's why we price it there. I'm like, but you're pricing based on
the future.
On the future
work
I'm
that
like,
hasn't been done. Yeah.
And there's a lot to go into getting that. It's not like just turn a switch on. I mean, there's a lot to do to get to that point of what you're thinking, or what you're telling us. And so what you're saying is so true.
It is.
Now, so with this hotel that we bought in Minnesota, the owners were like this old couple, and then I think during the pandemic they were like, I don't want to deal with anything, and so they're like, we just want to get rid of it. So it was kind of a forced sale.
Yeah.
So I love things, whether it's public or private, but if there's if something looks cheap, the first thing I want to know is, well, why is it trading at this valuation? So in this case, these owners are like 90 years old. Thank you. Yeah, 90 years old or whatever. They just want to get rid of it. They, in public markets, right? Sometimes people are just scared and they're going to sell at any price. Sometimes in private stuff, you'll see like a family's fighting and you just sell a business or sell something. There's litigation and you get rid of it. So there's a lot of opportunities when there's things that just need to be sold very quickly. You can find opportunity there. I think it's easier to find that in public markets personally. I think public generally tends to be easier than private.
Into something.
What? I'm sorry. You think that buying value add or misunderstood opportunities are better to be purchased in public?
I think it's easier. Arenas? It's not better. It's easier.
It's easier
just because you're not dealing with.
Well, so I'll break it down for you, right? Let's say you're a real estate guy, and you want to sell a property, and I go, hey, you're selling this multifamily. Well, you have no incentive to give me for 50 cents on the dollar, right? And if I say, hey, I'll buy this. I'll buy this house right here at an 11% cap rate, you'd laugh me out of the room.
Yeah.
Right. But there's public companies that I can buy at such bizarrely low valuations because of fear and groupthink that would never get sold at those prices in private markets. So private markets overall tend to be more efficient.
Okay. To build onto that, so is there more risk? Because when I feel like if something doesn't perform the way I want it to in my real estate reign, that's a direct reflection on me. Like I wasn't able to make it perform the way I said it would.
Yeah.
But like on a publicly traded thing, if you're trying to buy at 11 or you're thinking it's going to go to that, and maybe I don't know enough to even kind of be asking this question, but like, isn't it way easier if or out of your control if the CEO murders somebody, for example, or something like that, or when Facebook had this cybersecurity and then it tanked? Had you just been in an index fund, you wouldn't even have felt that right. rift at all.
Well, so Facebook's a good example, right? So like if Facebook tanks, now full disclosure, I actually do own shares of Meta, which is Facebook. I have to, as an analyst, I have to look at, okay, is this Cambridge Analytica scandal, is that impacting the earnings power of Facebook? Right? Is year 10 net income now wildly different? Because if the stock is going down a lot, right? If you look at the value of any asset, whether it's public or private, the value of an asset at the end of the day is all the cash flows it will ever produce discounted back to the present, right? We call it discounted cash flow. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a good framework to think from. It's useless as a model. And the reason it's useless as a model is you can't predict the future.
Yep.
And you change the discount rate even by 1%, you can get a vastly different valuation. So you end up getting this sort of illusion of precision if you use a spreadsheet to plug in numbers, because you'll never be right. But it's a very powerful framework to think of. So if a stock is going down by, and look at Facebook, right? The stock's down quite a bit the last couple of years. What the market is saying is they believe that year 10, year 15 net income is vastly different than what it was going to be 2 years ago. Not next year's income, because next year's income has almost no impact to the value of Facebook.
Yeah.
Just based off DCF. So my job as an analyst, has the business been that impaired that the valuation now makes sense? Now I say no from the way that I've looked at it. Obviously the market of itself has a different view of it. But the reason that I have a job is that the markets tend to not be efficient. They're mostly efficient, but they can get inefficient. And the way you know this, right? The way you actually can know this really clearly is you take a random publicly traded company, not a tiny little microcap, but I'm talking about like a Fortune 500 company, and you look at the high and low over the last 52 weeks, top tick to bottom tick. I don't remember what the average number is, but it's something like 40, 50, 60% difference. There is no way in hell that Walmart, Caterpillar, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, in a given year, the value changed by 50 or 60%. That just doesn't make any sense, right? These are pretty mature
established companies,
right? So the value is not changing much year to year, but the stock would show differently. So that in of itself shows you that one of those prices is probably incorrect.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah,
that's very well explained.
Huh. Well, we're kind of getting close, but before I think we got a couple more questions. I know one of my favorite ones is like, what are you struggling with now?
Yeah. Well, I'm always looking to, take my stuff to the next level. So the biggest struggle has been, so I had this idea, so on the coaching side, it's kind of a lot to unpack. So we're getting to the end.
That's fine. Well, no, we can go forever. Just
yeah.
We really can. So don't cut short.
We'll get you on the next episode too. 'Cause we're killing it on those episodes. I think you're number
5 or 6.
You're number 5, man.
Yeah.
All right.
This is awesome.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Nice rings, by the way.
Thank you, appreciate it.
In 2008, I did a very specific kind of personal development training, and it's in the realm of what's called ontological coaching. So it's in the realm of way of being, and if you look at the word human being, right, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And kind of the way I could best articulate that is, if you were at a bar, right, and let's say you're single and you want to go flirt with a girl or something, and you know all the right things to say, the right body language, and right clothing and whatever. Yeah. But who you're being is super manipulative and creepy and blah, blah, blah. She's not going to be left with, oh, this guy has great body language. She's going to be left with, it feels weird and I don't know why. On the flip side, maybe you're like dressed in like a t-shirt and a hoodie, right? Like you're stuttering because you're a little nervous. But she's left with, oh, like that's really sweet and endearing. And he's like really being genuine. People can feel, you can actually feel and experience who people are being. When people are being authentic, And the access to authenticity is really getting straight with yourself of how inauthentic you are. And so anyway,
wait, hold on, say that one more time.
Yeah, your access to authenticity is getting straight with yourself of how inauthentic you are. And we're all inauthentic.
Yep.
So people who go around talking about or saying to themselves how authentic they are is one of the most inauthentic things you can do.
You can do because you have to repeat it.
So I'm always looking to see, where am I bullshitting myself? Where am I bullshitting other people? How am I controlling things? What can I give up? What can I surrender into? So the program I did in 2008, it was a 3-day training, and I got more for myself, life-changing in 3 days, than I did in all the years of reading books combined. That threw me for a loop. And my insight from that, other than having lots of personal impact, was, holy shit, I wonder if this stuff was applied to businesses, if it would make a huge impact to the profits. And it turned out it does. There's been lots of research on this that shows it does. And I talked to the CEO of their business division. I said, hey, I think it'd be cool to start a fund and kind of apply value investing, combine it with ontological coaching, and kind of do shareholder activism with it. And for those of you who don't know what shareholder activism is, it's basically you take a position in a stock or public company as a shareholder, and then you shake things up, you make change. The traditional model is more the old school consulting model of I'm going to go cut costs, I'm going to make things more efficient. Nothing wrong with that. You can be good at it. But this model is vastly superior. And no one's doing it. And I was like, that's weird. Why is no one doing it? So it turned out that most people in the investment management industry think all the ontological stuff is a total scam. People who do all the ontological stuff are not attracted to value investing. They want to do crypto or NFTs or, in 08, it would have been like, they're into 3D printing and high-tech stuff because they want sexy shit. They don't want to go make a difference at a timber company or something like that. So I'm trying to combine these worlds, failing. And at some point I was like, I just got to learn the skill set myself. So I spent 8 years training under some mentorship of some amazing people to learn the skill set. And then I was like, oh shit, now I got to get into a public company. That's a whole other thing. So I've started doing programs for the public, and I fell in love with it. So I was like, I'll start a coaching consulting business. But really the reason I got that skill set is I want to go work with public companies. So to answer your question, the struggle I'm having right now is to get into my first public company and actually coaching the executives and the employees.
Wow. That is.
And I'm working on it. I think I'm close, but there's a difference between being close and actually.
Yeah, that's a big. Okay, well that kind of takes.
My thesis is that once I get into one,
then
the impact will be so crazy.
So crazy that
I will never have to make another phone
call
hustle.
Again.
People will come to me.
That's
at that
good.
point.
That's.
Huh? That's depth, man. That's deep.
Crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is that when you say that's your? Oh no, go ahead.
No, I mean that's deep, and that's pretty awesome, like high level stuff.
It's tough shit. Tough to get in that first company.
That's so we've never heard a goal like that on this podcast yet. Granted, there's only been 5 of them, but that is definitely the highest set. Yeah,
good for you, man. That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Well, obviously, if there's, I mean, how are you? Well, let me ask this. I mean, that's your goal. That's your point.
Yeah.
That's where you're going. What do you think? What are you doing or needed to be doing right now to get these companies, or how can we help to facilitate or get introduce to the right people to help you and get that first?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so you got several questions first. So the first question.
I like 3 questions. I tend to do that.
It's okay. So the first question is what I'm doing right now is, I invest in a lot of very tiny public companies. So actually getting to know some of the management teams of some of these companies, sharing about what I do. Obviously I can't force myself into these. I wouldn't want to, but kind of enrolling them in this idea and kind of sharing what I see possible. And two of the executives, actually that's kind of cool. So all it takes is one of them to hit. And then when I see kind of openings, I'll share what I do. I've shared a few things on my own podcast as well, and I have a pretty big following. So just getting that kind of word out, but really staying disciplined and doing it in a way where it's kind of looking for openings versus kind of getting like sleazy and doing marketing pitches. And that's just not my style. What you guys could do, if you guys know anyone who are executives of public companies,
I got a handful.
Yeah, I know a few, publicly traded companies, CEOs.
Yeah.
Seriously, I guarantee you probably have.
I told you I'm gonna reach out for some
250,000, whatever.
220,000.
220,000 followers. I guarantee there's people on there.
Now I'll say that the kicker
is
the fact that I'm on a podcast and you guys have a big following on TikTok. If I may share something.
Yeah, go ahead. Definitely.
The sort of kicker is, I don't actually expect people to trust that, who am I to say you get these amazing results. The people that I work with who've been doing this kind of stuff before I was born, work at some pretty big companies and have built up from the ground up some companies and some cultures of companies that you would have heard of. I don't know if I have permission to say the names, so I'm not going to say the names. You would have heard of these businesses. They're multi-billion-dollar companies. So there's a real track record.
The
There's
people
real,
that have kind of coached you or
oh,
helped you.
that are my colleagues on
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
on this
yeah.
project. So there's real data to back it up. And even more so, for the first time doing this, we'd be willing to take a lot less money up front, get some equity in the business, with the idea being that if we're successful, we'd make a fuck ton more money anyway. And if we're not successful, it's a pretty low risk
It's a great
investment.
entry.
That's a great.
So that's kind of that's how I look at it.
Like you're gonna be like, hey, I'll prove you. I'll put my
Money
where
my mouth is.
In my investment management company, I do something similar for qualified investors, which there's a certain income limit to that. For qualified investors, I charge a 0% management fee, and then have, right, so there's no management fee, 6% hurdle rate, meaning I will not take a performance fee until I make 6%. There's a high watermark, meaning that if you're down 50%, I have to make it all back plus an additional 6% before I make a performance fee. And then I take 25% of the profits for that year, and then it resets.
So if I give you $10,000,
If
right?
you're a qualified investor,
there's terms to that.
And there's terms to that,
which is different than accredited.
It's different than accredited. It's actually stricter than accredited. So I think qualified, I might be wrong. It's either $2.1 or $2 million net worth requirement, or you have to be making X amount per year, or you have to have $750,000 plus invested with me to be a qualified investor. Then I can legally charge you that.
All right, let's use 100,000. Say so you're qualified. You give them 100,000. Ask your question.
Right. $100,000. So you're saying based on I give you $100,000.
Yeah.
I mean the risk for me is
if it drops by X.
Let's say last year I put it all on Facebook. I put 100% on Facebook. Thing dropped 40%, or let's say just drop. Make it easy. Let's say it dropped 50%, right? Bought some securities for you, drops 50%. Oh. I have to double your money plus an additional 6% before I can even make my first 6%.
And so then if you make it drops from 100,000 to 50,000, you get it back to 100,000. Now you get your 6%. So you're
no. I'd have to get 106,000, and then I can start making a performance for that year.
Yeah.
But let's say you go from 50 to 110. I would make the profit from 106 to 110, so that 4,000. I would take 25%
of that,
and then the new high water mark would become 110,000.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's really the principle of making money for your investors, not off your investors.
Because you showed me in confidentiality, which I'm not going to really say, but you showed me the percentages you'd averaged. So there was years.
Those were gross numbers.
Those were gross numbers. Yes. Just to be clear, there was not very many, but there was a couple years that were negative returns.
Yeah.
So then when that happened, you're saying that following year you did which saw.
I'll say it this way: this year I have some good negative returns, right? So if I had an investor that invested, let's say they came in and they started an account with me in December 2021, right? They were a qualified investor choosing to take this fee structure. And they don't all choose this fee structure. I recommend they do. They don't all take it. They would, unless I have a killer next few months, most likely I would not be taking a fee from their account this year.
Yeah. I appreciate you being so honest.
Disclosing
that. I mean, because it's not all wins. Like I just took my first loss after 7 years. I never dropped a contract.
There's a distinction though, right? If you have a negative year of performance, it doesn't inherently mean that you screwed up.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side, if you have a bomb year of performance, blowout, amazing year of performance. I don't know if the lingo in the Midwest is different.
No, you're good.
If you bomb out or something, it can mean the opposite. If you have a really great year in the stock market, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you became a genius.
Yeah.
Right. You can actually make a mistake and make money, and you can actually do the right thing
and
lose money.
Yep.
So there's a difference between a mark-to-market loss and a permanent loss of capital, right? So volatility, efficient market theory would say volatility equates to risk. Bullshit. And the way I can tell you that it's bullshit, let's say you own a farm, right? And your farm is producing X amount of, soybeans a year or something, right? And, and making a certain amount of money. And then, I come to you and I say, well, I think the farm is only worth half this amount. Well, if I'm the only potential buyer and I say, well, I'm only willing to pay half of what you bought it for, there's a mark-to-market loss, right? The market is saying it's worth half. but you don't have to sell it to me,
You don't,
and it
yeah.
doesn't even mean that it's worth less, right? So, say in the market right now, there's inflation fears around Russia, right? People are kind of just selling everything. Now, some of it really wasn't bubble tearing for good reason, but some of it, I would say, is inefficiently and inappropriately undervalued. Now, I'm not going to say what names they are, but there's some stuff that I've been buying that I think I'm paying 50 cents on the dollar for. So I don't, I'm a buyer at those prices, but no one forces me to sell. Just because the market says it's worth this
doesn't mean you have to take that loss.
Now over 10 years or 15 years,
that
right?
would be it. Yeah.
If it was still down, most likely I probably made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
So there really is a difference between if a stock is down, that doesn't inherently mean there's a permanent loss of capital.
Mm-hmm.
And if a stock is up, it doesn't inherently mean
it's
the value of that business went up.
Yeah.
But over time, they'll be pretty in sync with each other. But year to year,
which goes back to what people always say, like just you just let it ride. I mean, it's a long game, right? I mean, in all these investments opportunities,
depends.
Is it the long game or is it? I mean, are you watching? I mean, you're watching this.
No, he doesn't trade. Remember,
I don't trade.
I told you that.
You
He
don't trade.
We went over this.
I'm watching the businesses. See, I don't even call them stocks. I'm buying businesses.
So you're watching the business. And the
performance.
If you bought a farm, okay?
Interesting.
If you bought if you buy a farm, right? You're not going to be calling a broker every day and say, "What's the farm worth today?" You're not going to be calling a farm broker every second of every day from 9:30 in the morning to 4 p.m. Eastern time. What's the farm worth? What's the farm worth? What's the farm worth? You're not going to be doing that. But if you own a business, let's say you own Caterpillar stock, right? Do construction. You know Caterpillar, right?
Yeah.
We're in the Midwest.
You're good. You're good.
We're good. Trying to make this a little Midwestern, right? So you own Caterpillar stock, right? Well, that business, if you're now a shareholder, right, you buy stock, you are a shareholder of that business. You own an X% of that income statement, cash flow statement, balance sheet, right? You have a CEO. You get to vote your shares to elect that CEO every year. You're getting a market quotation every half second from, in the morning till 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. You would go crazy if you had imagine this house. If you own this house.
Yeah.
Imagine if a broker was telling you what this house was worth every single second of the day up until 3 p.m. Central Time. You would go insane.
You go crazy. Yeah, that's a
I'm
good
not
point.
calling you a lot, but
Yeah.
So the problem is when you have access to that information in real time, it can really fuck with people's psychology. When people go, I just had an annual meeting and someone asked me, "What do you think of the market?" And I go, "I don't think about it. Like I just don't. There's securities, they're publicly traded. I'm at the batter's box. I'm looking to swing. The beauty of the stock market, there's no called strikes. In baseball, right? If I take 3 strikes, I'm out. Right? At some point, you have to swing. I can take 1,000 pitches and I never have to swing. I can stand there for 3 years and not swing. So recently, I've been getting some pitches that kind of go into my sweet spot, and I've swung, and we'll see where the ball lands. And they're not all gonna go over the fence. Most of them might be singles and doubles, and occasionally it's gonna be a foul ball and get caught or something, and I'll be out. But net, so far I haven't lost a lot of money, and I usually, most of my investments just kind of work out okay. But by avoiding losing money, and you get the accidental home run or grand slam, you make actually a pretty good rate of return over many decades.
Years. Yeah, and
decades.
You're almost up to 2 decades now.
Almost, yeah, 17 years now of compounding.
You old son of a gun.
Yeah, in my I've been running my business since end of 2014. But personally, I've been managing, my own money or family money since, in some form since 2005. February of 2005.
Man, well, we just flowed. We could keep, I was like, we could keep going, but with just the time, can we end on maybe a favorite quote and how people can reach out to you, whether they want to be in your fund or watch your podcast or reach out to you directly?
Intelligent Investing Podcast.
Yeah, so my podcast is the Intelligent.
Favorite quote. Let's get your favorite quote first.
My favorite quote, there's a few, but the one that comes to mind right now is set the conditions, see who shows up to the party.
Set the conditions, see who shows up to the party.
You can't lose that way.
I like that.
Yeah.
Who's that by?
One of my mentors, John
Eric.
King.
Like Eric.
It's not, no, I didn't.
No,
know.
yeah, okay.
It's in a book called Tribal Leadership, which is some of the work that I teach. The guy who invented it is a guy named John King. He's one of my mentors. He'd be a cool guy to have on the show, FYI.
Okay.
I could absolutely get him on if you want.
He'd come out here, or do we got to go to him?
You'd probably have to go to him. Or you could do it virtually too on Zoom if you.
We haven't done a virtual one yet. We've been like
I hear he's in Mexico. If you want to go to Mexico,
we can go to Mexico.
But,
I can go to Mexico.
He's a brilliant man. But that was a quote in his book. Great book, by the way. It's called Tribal Leadership.
Okay.
So that's the quote. Set the conditions. See who shows up to the party. It's something I really live by.
I like
too.
that. Yeah.
And then in terms of
how to find you. And
yeah,
all that
so I'm
stuff.
on Instagram,
Okay.
Eric Schleien. You can put it in the show notes.
Yep.
My website for my investment management company is gscm.co, Granite State Capital Management. I'm also on Twitter, Eric Schleien. I'm very active on Twitter. I love having people reach out to me if they have questions. So I'm very available if people ever want to reach out to me. You can contact me on Twitter, on Instagram. I really do strive to answer every message.
Well, dude, I really, really
Been great.
appreciate your time
Yeah.
today. Thank
Yeah,
you
my
again
pleasure.
so much.
Yeah, of
man.
course.
I really
Of course.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, of course, this is
Come
fun.
back to Iowa.
Yeah, anytime. All right.
Really
With the
Well,
road trips I
good.
do, at some point I will. So.
yeah.
And I assume Peanut's also invited.
Yeah,
He's
always
always invited. You guys can't see her, but
Yeah.
he's a handsome
Him,
guy.
him,
Yeah.
him.
Or he. Well, I said it the second time right.
Yeah,
You
you're
can't
like
see
her,
him.
handsome.
Him, yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Dude,
He's
a glass and a half of
gender-fluid.
whiskey. All right, this is the first time. Oh yeah, guest appearance.
The guest
There we
appearance.
go.
Is this the first dog on the show?
This
Oh, for
is-
sure. Yeah, for sure.
This one's
Hi, Bubbers.
special.
Hey, Bubbers.
She's so
He does
sweet.
interviews too. He says.
Oh, he does.
And
Yeah.
he says all listeners can get if they give good belly rubs, they're welcome.
Oh,
They're welcome,
I
they're
He
love
loves the
welcome.
belly rubs.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
what's
yeah.
going on over here?
You know the aliens are looking down on us, be like, these guys are crazy.
Yeah, that's right. Right now, literally, they're in the middle of a podcast. What are they doing?
This creature has no idea what's going on, but we
He likes
pretend like he
tails,
does.
so that's how we know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
You gotta say something. Have you all been something barking? Oh, yeah.
He's very stoic. He's not saying anything.
He's
Just chilling.
He's
all
a
right.
man of few words.
Handsome guy, though. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We will be tuning in again, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you again, dude, for
Yeah, of
coming.
of
I
course.
appreciate it, Eric. It
Yeah.
was a pleasure. And watch us next time, me and Dustin. We'll get back to you guys. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.